David Clark. I'm the horticulture instructor at the Buffalo-Erie County Botanical Gardens and also at Phipps Conservatory in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Can you really root a rose that you get from a flower shop? Well, you know what? Yes, you can. And I'm going to show you how to do that today. It's really easy. To prepare your rose for rooting, you can't root the entire stem. Okay? The plant roots itself on newer growth than on older growth. And it's not going to root at the top where the rose head is. So actually what you have to do, and just use pruners or you can use scissors, the first thing that you have to do is, don't be afraid of this now, you have to cut the head of the rose off, just like that. What we have here on the stem, when you look close, the leaves grow off of the stem, and underneath the leaves, and I'll show you here at the bottom, there are what are called nodes. And these are where the new growth of the rose plant is going to come from. Any kind of a container, deeper is better. You don't want to use a clear container because plants' roots grow where? They grow in the dark in the soil. Okay? Plant roots will actually grow away from the sun. It's got a rim on the top here. You have to cut that rim off using just a pair of scissors. So what you do is you take your paper punch, slide it on the container. You make 1, 2, 3, or 4. 3 looks really good. It's evenly spaced. They're used for drainage of water. Now, you don't want to fill your container up to the top with water and then move it because you're going to have water all over the place. So it's important to have escape roots because we're going to fill this with a rooting material. And that material is called perlite. Okay, this is expanded volcanic rock. Think of what happens when you put a kernel of popcorn in the microwave. What happens? It's got a little bit of moisture inside of it, and the heat pops the popcorn open. Well, the same thing happens with perlite. It's stone, and they bake it so it expands into this very fluffy material. Okay? A thing about working with perlite is it's very, very dusty, and it's a little irritating to the lungs, so you always want to work with your perlite moistened. And I did this a little bit earlier. I just put the perlite in a Ziploc bag, poured some water in the top, and let it soak up on its own. So after you have the holes in your container, you fill all the way up with your perlite to just a little bit below those holes. And you pat it down a little bit. If you need to add more, you can. Perfect. Okay, so that is sitting right about there, right below those holes. You're going to take regular tap water just to re-moisten this. You want to fill it up all the way. You'll see it'll start to rise up from the bottom of the container. That's how you know you have enough in it. So to make this rose stem form roots quicker, we're going to use a rooting hormone. This is rutone. It's rutone number 10. Rutone comes in number 1s through number 10s, 10s being stronger for your woody type materials. When you work with your rooting materials, don't dip it into the original container because there's a possibility of contaminating that container with fungal spores and things that are going to start some rotting on other stems, so you pour it into a separate container first. Okay. Not a lot because you're going to actually dispose of this. You're going to take your stem and cut it to be about 6 to 8 inches long. You want to cut that at a node at the bottom of the stem because that's where the roots are going to come out best. So you take your shears, you cut it at an angle, A, so that it goes into the rooting material easier, and B, so that it doesn't collect a water droplet at the bottom. Then I like to take this stem and dip it into a little bit of water and then tap it into my rooting hormone like this, and you can see it gets really, really well covered. That's what you want. Tap that off, and you can take a dowel or your chopstick. This is a plant stake. Make a hole right in the center of your container, kind of like when you plant a plant outdoors. And you push that stem all the way down inside, all the way down to the bottom. You're going to take and use your fingers and tap that perlite around the top, just so that rose is in there nice and snug. We use perlite because it's an in-between rooting product between straight water and soil. It has a little bit more air porosity in it, but it also has the moisture content in it that the stems need. One more little trick when you're rooting flowers, because they don't have root systems on them, they're going to lose water quickly. It's called transpiration. So I like to remove about half of the leaves off of the stem. You have to leave some leaves on it because what's going to happen if you take it off, there's no photosynthesis happening. So that plant has to get some kind of sunlight to keep producing its sugars to get that rooting process off to the bottom. Because they don't have any roots, you have to keep them moist. Some people will grow under a misting system. I like to use either plastic bags, okay, or another really good thing that I like to use. I'm sure you all know what this thing is. You get blankets and towels and sheets in it. This is a blanket bag, and you can use this as a little greenhouse. You put your cutting inside of it. I also want to spray down the inside of the bag to humidify it just with a spray bottle. Then it comes already pre-equipped with a zipper on the top so you can seal your little plant inside. Okay? And that's your prepared rose cutting. This needs to root for about 6 or 8 weeks. Now, how do you tell when that cutting is ready to be taken out and repotted into something else? Well, you have to zip open the top. And also another trick, don't close this all the way tight. You want moisture in, but the plant has to breathe a little bit also, so leave one side open. You can tell when that plant is ready to be potted up into soil because if you give a tug on it, it's not going to pull out. You feel some resistance inside this perlite. And again, that's going to take 6 or 8 weeks. I like to mark things on the outside of my bags. You know, I potted it up this day, and then it's going to be ready in about a month and a half or 2 months, and I put another date on the back. So just by looking at your container, you're going to know when it's ready. And there's no guesswork involved. So in 6 to 8 weeks from now, I think, it's October out here. It's going to be snowing outside here in western New York. So you're going to have to grow this plant inside as a plant. Now, what kind of conditions do rose plants like outside? They like full sun. In the house at this time of the year, you're going to have to put it under grow lights. You're going to have it warm. You can't grow it in, 40 degrees in the basement. They're going to have some warm. They're pretty copious feeders, so after about 3 months, you want to start feeding it with a liquid feed fertilizer. Okay? You can start out at half strength. You don't have to use full strength, but you have to grow it on as a regular plant all the way through the winter, all the way through the springtime, until you get to that point in May where we don't have a frost involved. And then you can plant it outdoors, and you'll have a rose bush from a stem that you received or purchased yourself. Now, one thing about the rose plants with roots on their own stems are called own-rooted roses. The root structure is not as strong as what you see in a garden rose, because garden roses are actually grafted. They take the top stem that has the flower characteristics that they want on it, and they graft it onto a very vigorous rootstock so that it can withstand our growing conditions and it grows a lot quicker. These plants don't have that. In some winters where it's very, very cold, that graft can freeze out. You're going to lose the top of the rose plant, and then you're going to come up with a rootstock underneath. But with an own root rose plant, it will be true. Okay, so there's a couple good things and a couple bad things about this. So the question is, can I grow a rose bush from a rose stem that I received or purchased myself? Well, yes, you can. It's going to take 6 or 8 weeks. In the house at this time of the year, you're going to have to put under grow lights. You're going to have some fertilizer all the way through till the springtime, but you will be rewarded with a plant that you can save for many years. I hope you give it a try.